just to preface things, I have a ton of respect for Mark Cuban. Okay, I think he's a very good businessman. I watch Shark Tank religiously, if anyone knows me well. Last night was Shark Tank Tuesday. I watched every episode. New episode this Friday. So listen, I am a huge fan of Mark Cuban from a business standpoint. And I think that I I think that what he said works in most realms of business, also most realms of personal life. You don't want to get too greedy when you have a good thing going. But his connection to the NBA, obviously, taints his opinion, I think, in this realm. I think he's jealous. I purely think he's jealous of the strides that the NFL is making, especially with this new TV contract. I think he wishes his league had that type of exposure. And listen, anything that gets people talking about Mark Cuban likes. And now we're talking about him. I could see people getting a little bit fed up with the amount of time that football's on. But what I think that Cuban has to take into consideration is the fandom of the NFL. You know, NFL franchises, even the worst NFL franchises, have fan bases that are very dedicated. We're talking about the biggest stadiums out of the four professional sports, and there's franchises that aren't doing that well that manage to put people in the seats. NFL fans are very dedicated fan base. I don't think that they're going to get so fed up with seeing the NFL on 3 or 4 days out of the week as opposed to it's already on 2 days out of the week. So really, you're adding the Thursday night games, which have been in existence the last few years, and they're talking about Saturday games at the end of the season. I don't think it's going to necessarily oversaturate the market to the point where people are fed up. It's still going to be the same amount of games week to week to week because it's the same amount of teams. Now we're just changing it and giving you more options of times when you can watch NFL football. I get that point, but in the same respect, if you look at Sunday Ticket, Red Zone, those type of advances that have come in the last few years, I think it's a testament to the fact that people want more football. You know, we're hungry for more football. We don't just want to see our team play on Sunday and that's it. We can consume a whole lot more football. And I think that having these games now spread out and not necessarily always being a part of packages like Sunday Ticket or like Red Zone, which I was hearing some talk that Red Zone might go into a package at some point and not just be a free channel with most of your cable, the way your cable's provided. But I think having those games spread out and giving people more options to watch them isn't going to necessarily be a bad thing. I think we can afford to consume more football and consume it in different ways. You're still going to have the majority of your games on Sunday. You're just going to have the opportunity to see these Thursday games and then with the adaptation of the Saturday games in a new way that you've never been able to see it before. Well, I think I agree with Cuban in terms of the NFL getting greedy and trying to make their product head and shoulders above everybody else when they already are head and shoulders above everybody else. I get where he's going with that. I think the TV deal, though, is just business. I think that's purely business. Those games already exist. They're just coming up with different... Right. And they're coming up... Exactly. And they're coming up with different ways to get you to tune into these games that they've already made a decision are going to exist. I think the NFL just needs to be careful in terms of tweaking things too much in terms of the product they're giving us, the on-the-field product. That's where I could see the NFL getting into any sort of trouble and hurting themselves, like that talk earlier in the offseason about getting rid of extra points. Little things like that. I don't have a strong opinion either way about the extra point, but I think that's an example of them making a change that maybe isn't so necessary, and it can go either way in terms of fan interest. I think that's the only way they need to be careful. Well, I think as far as the Thursday night games go, I think the NFL's approach was we're not going to put our premier teams on Thursday night until we hit some sort of a benchmark with Thursday night. I'm sure they have something in place where they say, okay, now we have a level of interest in Thursday. We'll invest and put a premier team on a Thursday night. For now, I think they're using Thursday as a testing ground. But here's that next step. Let's put Thursday night on national television and see how much people tune in. And if they reach another benchmark with it, which, like I said, I don't know what that is. I don't know if they have one. But if they reach it, then maybe they'll say, okay, we'll make that a better product now. I don't know. I mean, I'm just trying to get into the NFL's head a little bit here. But that's where I could see them maybe going with this idea of allowing a national network like CBS to air those games. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I totally agree. And I don't like the rule change of taking dunking out. I think it's one of those where you're just overreaching again. There's no real basis for this rule change. They were talking about, well, it's just an extension of the rule that they put in a few years ago about not using the football as a prop in celebrating. Okay, but you still allow spiking. Is the football being used as a prop when you spike it? You know, you can't spike without the football. So you still allow things like the Lambeau leap, which involves a player on the field going into the stands. Like, I don't care what anybody says. That's a recipe for disaster. Ask the NBA. They know that. Players going that close to players. Exactly. So it's one of those things where it's like, what's your basis for saying that a player can't dunk the football? Now, I remember the Jimmy Graham incident last year in Tampa Bay. He pulled the goalpost. It came off a little bit. They had to adjust it. Delayed the game. Okay, I get that. Then punish him in that moment. You know, that was one instance. The NFL is almost 100 years old. That was one instance of the goalpost being affected by the dunk. I just think they're overreaching once again. I totally agree with that. I think you need to get on the phone with Roger Goodell immediately and discuss that with him, because you're right. The NFL, listen, that whole No Fun League acronym, it's pretty accurate. I mean, the NFL is not a fun league to watch in terms of thinking that you're going to get entertained. You're not. You know, you get entertained during the Super Bowl, and that's pretty much it. Every other game the rest of the year is pretty much the same product, no matter what stadium you go to, no matter what teams you're watching. And when you take these personal things out, like really hindering celebrations and what you can do, you're right. It just becomes even more impersonal. So we'll see. I mean, I think that minor league football thing is a great idea. You know, they tinkered with that with NFL Europe, but that was weird because the bottom line is Europe is not going to latch on and embrace football the same way that it gets embraced here. So I like the idea of a minor league NFL right here in America in the same similar vicinity as your team. That's a fantastic point. And you're right. Growing up, especially watching the Eagles, we had that kind of stuff. We had those kind of players. T.O. used to have his thing in the one great season he had with us, where he would score, stand on the football, flap his wings. He would get fined for that now. You know, Donovan used to moonwalk and dunk when he would score a touchdown. He would get fined for that now. You know, so you're right. We're not going to have that 10 years from now when we're looking back over the last 10 years of NFL football. There won't be signature celebrations. Guys basically score. They might do a little dance that they always do, but it's very tapered compared to what players used to do. Just to sum it all up, I can't wait till the day when players can pull out a Sharpie from their socks and autograph a football and throw it in the crowd like T.O. did, or pulling out a cell phone from underneath the goalpost after you score a touchdown. Those were incredible celebrations. That's when they got really creative, and that's what prompted the NFL to say enough is enough. But in those moments, it was amazing.